So we know the COVID crisis has been exposing cracks in our system. And in doing so, it gives us an opportunity to try to fix the system rather than just kind of go back to normal, the way things were before COVID. We think that progressing towards more gender-sensitive social protection is an important component of preventing vulnerable people from falling through the cracks during and after the crisis, and an important step toward a better, more equitable new normal. Thank you.
Yeah, so I want to emphasize two things. The first is that countries all over the world now, they're forming sort of response committees to deal with the health emergency, and they're trying to form some sort of economic recovery committee to deal with both the short-term resilience issues and the longer-term economic recovery issues. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's really critical to make sure that nutrition has a voice in those committees or those institutions. Because there's a bit of a risk that it's just going to be sidelined, especially when nutrition is housed often in ministries of health, and almost all the resources of those ministries of health are being diverted now to COVID-19. They need to keep up their essential maternal and child healthcare services and the sort of a range of other multi-sectoral coordination activities that are so critical for nutrition. And then the last thing I would especially urge governments and development partners to encourage is surveillance systems. This is a very unusual, unprecedented crisis. Everybody's operating in a state of huge uncertainty, and even fairly, simple surveillance systems could go a long way to reducing that uncertainty. Thanks.
So even in normal times, we see crackdowns on informal traders are way too common in African cities. And so to respond effectively to public health emergencies such as COVID-19, it's critical for municipal and national governments to really see traders as fundamental partners in the food system, rather than just a nuisance to be tolerated in an ad hoc manner. Thank you.
Yeah, I think from my side, it's important to make sure that this health crisis is not going to turn into a food crisis. And so we have to keep our eye on these value chains. And so it's very important to keep them functioning well. And so we see already that there are important changes happening in availability and in prices. These prices might create issues with incentives, and so that might all kind of problem for the future. And so we need to be aware of these things happening, and we need to be proactive to avoid further problems. Thank you.
Thank you. To summarize, IFPRI's economy-wide modeling team is conducting COVID-19 impact assessments in many countries around the world. And for Egypt, our early results suggest that the country is weathering the global storm relatively well. We estimate that quarterly economic output from April to June may be 18% lower due to COVID-19. Agriculture is the most resilient sector, and we have seen this in other countries too. And urban households are most affected, but incomes of the most vulnerable, the poor, also decline substantially. Cross-country learning of what works will be very critical for the way forward, and as we all move out of the lockdown towards a new normal.
Let me, as last speaker in the row, end by thanking all the speakers. I thought this was a fascinating panel. Both the messages and the presentations and also the Q&As, I thought provided a lot of information and insights. I am encouraging you also to go and look at our website, because all the speakers here have written blogs. So these blogs are available with more details. They also sometimes have links to more elaborate papers or studies, which you can find in that way. Our website has been completely renovated, upgraded, because it has now, besides the blogs, also reference to a series of research papers, to our events, virtual activities, and other things. And so in that respect, I would also like to announce that we will have a future panels like this one in the coming weeks coming up. So I would encourage you to stay tuned if you want to learn more about COVID from IFPRI.